Good morning, ladies and gents, hope you're all well, and you join me on Fleet Street. And our location for today is number 99 Fleet Street, Punch Tavern. There's been a pub on this site since the 17th century, and the previous pub was called the Crown Sugar Loaf. That was knocked down and rebuilt in the late 1830s. And around about 1839-1840, when all the journalists from Punch magazine started frequenting this pub, as an act of loyalty and a nod to them, this pub was renamed to the Punch Tavern. It's a lovely one inside, a real Victorian gin palace. And it is named the Punch Tavern, although it does have Mr. Punch up on it. It is named after Punch magazine, so that's one of its little things there. We'll be crossing over the road in a sec, and you'll join me inside where we'll get a nice tour of the inside of this pub. It looks very narrow from the frontage, but it's not, and it was built in two phases, and it's an interesting part of its history. This part was built first, or later on adapted first, and then this part over there, which is the Crown Sugar Loaf now. It was originally one pub, and then some kind of bust up or something happened. It divided into two, so you now have Punch Tavern and then the Crown Sugar Loaf just over there. So join me as we cross over the road and go for our tour of this one. And although Mr. Punch is up there, it's not called the Punch Tavern for him, it's because of the Punch magazine. It's a real Victorian gin palace. As I said, there was a pub on the site earlier, before, but this is original, very, very original Victorian. And they built a gin palace in those days. They didn't mess around, did they? We may get copyrighted for the music, so I may have to do a silent one. And yeah, captions. Mr. Punch. There's Judy. We shall go in now. '26. 1926. Punch, and obviously pub memorabilia everywhere in here. Go out that way and go out onto the back street. There's a hairdresser's there, better not film that. Punch and Judy again. That's what I'd like to know. Fireplace. Punch and Judy. Above the bar there you've got Punch and Judy figures.
Yeah, well, we should just got it.
I hope you all enjoyed that one. Join me again soon. Hello ladies and gents. So we had our drink at the Punch Tavern. Now, as I said in that tour, it was originally called the Crown Sugar Loaf. 210 years ago, that was originally two separate pubs. One called the Crown and the other one called the Sugar Loaf. The Sugar Loaf was the pub that Samuel Pepys used to drink at. They merged into the Crown Sugar Loaf, which then eventually became the Punch Tavern. The leasehold for this pub, it was one pub, was two separate leaseholds come the 1980s. It was Nicholson's Brewery and Sam Smith's. Now, Sam Smith's tried to set up its own separate bar in the bit we're going to go and see, and it caused problems and arguments and rows. Anyway, negotiations and goodness knows what later. Come 1997, the pub closed for renovations. This reopened as the Punch Tavern, slightly smaller than it originally was. And the Crown Sugar Loaf, that was missing for a few years, but I'll take you round here. In 2004, the Crown Sugar Loaf that we see here reopened as a separate pub, walled off from the Punch Tavern. So two separate brewing companies, arguments and rows later and whatnot, because there was only one drop cellar, you see, for the Punch Tavern. So this needed its own drop cellar, which it now has just there. It's one of London's micro bars, or one of London's smallest pubs. It's a really lovely one. 2004 it was opened. Everything inside except the bar is new. The bar is original, but everything else is 2004 or reclaimed materials. But when we go in here, it's like a time warp. It's really like stepping back in time, and it's absolutely beautiful pub, which I hope you're all going to enjoy. This is Bride Lane, looking at St Bride's Church with the crescent moon up there. London's very moody and atmospheric at night time, isn't it? I like London. And we're looking out onto Fleet Street there with bigbus.com, one of the old tour buses. It'll be freezing cold at this time of night. And what nicer sight than a nicely lit warm pub and a beer waiting for us. So, join me inside.
That's a shame. I think places in the UK should adopt that French law that we're not allowed to smoke and we have to donate it.
Yeah.
It's insane how much waste there is.
Oh yeah, I don't know, because I actually thought that they had, like they did in the old building, they had the food things where you put your food base and you know your trays and everything. Because all the trading and I had grain, you know, your mountains are full of that, and the forks and spoons of all wood. Then the inside comes to that side. And I thought that's exactly what the new thing did with food. I thought they just put it into the food, the waste food. It's actually nice to run out and self-service. The guy was there. And he took the hot food.
You wouldn't think that all this is relatively new, would you?
What are you doing? Don't be that oven.
That's one good thing about this company. They're trying to recycle even more now. And they even want to recycle well not recycle, but they want to collect the ash from the fireplaces. And they have a partnership with the farm in York. And they're giving it to the farmers to spread it over the... Yeah, because it's a very good fertilizer.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah, we'll all receive a container on the trains, and we'll go back to the brewery and we'll receive an empty instead. Yeah. And with the chemicals as well, everything will be coming from the brewery in a smaller container.
And here's our earliest historical image that features the Punch Tavern in it, marked with the blue arrow. You can just see the old lamp there sticking out. That's where the Punch Tavern is, and this is Fleet Street, 1890, looking right down at St Paul's, and you've got St Martin's Ludgate there. And also note the train bridge with the steam train going over it. That's no longer exists either. That's been taken away. Fleet Street, like today, like this picture, is still very much a busy roadway, but very much different. I mean, the horses and carts, how smartly people are dressed. The Punch Tavern, of course, as I said, was named after Punch magazine, and this is its first ever issue, its opening issue, from July 1841, the London Carnival. And at first, it was funny at first, and that's how it first started. But very quickly it turned very satirical and very mocking. This is a slightly nicer one, a cover page. Punch magazine, volume 26, covering January to June 1854, and the opening of the Crystal Palace in Sydenham. But here you see where it goes into its satirical and mocking. Punch magazine. A caricature of British composer Sir Arthur Sullivan being knighted in 1880. And here you see a pretty racy one from Second World War era. Cartoons about communism and fascism in the run-up to the Second World War era. And here's our next image showing the Punch, and this is early 20th century, this one. Once again with St Paul's and St Martin's Ludgate and the old railway bridge, and Fleet Street as it was then as a real hive of newspaper and printing industry, a real hive of that in London. If you wanted newspapers or printing, Fleet Street was where you went to in London in those days. And the Punch Tavern. This is it in the late 1920s, very early 1930s, still with its original gas lights hanging up outside and its caged gates. Here you see this 1986 picture, and this is the Punch Tavern, but this bit that we're looking at is now the Crown and Sugar Loaf, separated from the Punch. And if you look in this picture, if you go over towards the left as the floor goes round, that's where you would have originally walked from one part of the pub into another, and it was, as I say, originally one big pub, this being the quiet back bar area of it, and this being the outside of that part in the late 80s, Punch Tavern. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what gave us one pub turned into two separate pubs with the bust up that I spoke about in the beginning of the video. So we now have the Punch Tavern on Fleet Street and the Crown and Sugar Loaf in St Bride's Lane. Hope you all enjoyed the tour of these two lovely separate pubs. And when you look at this one, when you go inside, you really would think that everything has always originally been as you see it. The walling off and restoration job and reopening, they've done an amazing job on this one. It's a real little time capsule, and usually very quiet as well. So if you're looking for a quiet drink in London, I can recommend this one to you. So I hope you've all enjoyed, and thanks for watching.